Welcome to The Real Math of Business with Eleanor Bennett, where you plus this podcast equals better decisions. I'm Eleanor Bennett, speaker, author, and leadership expert. I work with chief executive officers and chief financial officers really to help them create universally investable companies where people serve people and the math just works. This week, I'm chatting to Jason Dunn, but first, here is my thought-provoking headline. WNBL allowing fans to pick new rules for the season. Now, apparently, the WNBL is going to change or create 6 new rules and allow the audience to pick 3. Now, I've seen this across AFL, I've seen this in netball, and quite frankly, this drives me nuts. Excuse my French. Because why? Why do we need to change the rules? I've played basketball, but I'm definitely not anywhere near WNBL standards, right? But why are we changing the rules? And why are we allowing audiences to pick 3 of them? Like, just tell me the logic. I just don't get it. Why fix what's not broken? I mean, I kind of feel like, are we just changing things for change's sake? Have we not got enough change and chaos in the world that we need to play with something that's working pretty well? And the thing that worries me about allowing fans to pick the new rules is, are we just going to pander to the squeaky wheel? I mean, let's think about voting in elections. We have all seen what happens when voting is not mandatory and you can just vote if you want to. You just get the crazy people who make crazy decisions, right? You get the people who want to agitate. So if you are allowing fans to pick new rules for a competition, are you going to get the people who actually know how to play basketball, who actually have the interests of the players and the whole comp in mind? Or are you going to get the, lowest common denominator people who just want to do things for fun, who've got nothing better to do than to play around with rules for a game they don't really care about? People don't leave reviews typically because they're happy. They leave reviews and make changes because they're cranky. Is that the kind of decision-making you want in the WNBL? I don't know. I'm just saying. And I guess, coming back to, is the WNBL broken? Is that why they need to create these changes? I don't know, but I kind of feel like it's a little bit similar to how the world is adopting AI at the moment. We're going, we've got to use AI for this, for that, and the other. AI is just a tool. Yes, it's a tool that's revolutionizing business, but it is just a tool. You want to think about what is broken, what is the genuinely good business opportunity for our strategy, and then apply AI to help overcome that problem or optimize that challenge. It is not just something we just need to throw around and waste money and time and energy implementing. You've got to do it strategically. So, WNBL, good luck. Fans of WNBL, all the best. I find lots of changes with really good sports really frustrating as a fan. Let's see what happens, eh? Rant over. And now to our chat with Jason Dunn. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be joined by our guest today, Jason Dunn. In his new book, Greatness Doesn't Care, he challenges one of the most common assumptions in leadership, that exceptional performance is driven by talent. Instead, he argues that long-term success is built through discipline, resilience, and the decisions leaders make every day, particularly when circumstances are difficult. At 62, Jason is still competing in some of the world's toughest endurance events, having completed more than 14 IRONMAN competitions and multiple ultramarathons while building several successful businesses. Drawing on lessons from both elite endurance sport and entrepreneurship, he explores what separates high performers from everyone else, why many leaders unknowingly limit themselves through fear and self-doubt, and how to build the mindset required to perform under pressure. Jason, thank you so much for being here today.
Eleanor, thank you. It's my absolute pleasure. And hi, everyone.
I'm really honoured for you showing up here this morning. You had your big book launch last night for Greatness Doesn't Care. You must be on a massive high. You're probably a little fatigued because I know you've been on the road for a little while, but you must be on a huge high. I thought I'd love to piggyback off the high and also, the idea of the recency. Can you describe for us, how did the book launch go? What were people really, connecting with in the book? And then sort of to land at home, I would love to know what was the most interesting question you were asked last night.
Okay, there's plenty to unpack there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Elena. Um, hey, look, it was a fabulous evening, and I guess one of those pinch me moments for a ordinary bloke like me to get to launch my book in the most iconic bookstore in the Southern Hemisphere. Thank you, Dymocks, in the CBD, and the amazing team there. Yeah, that's a pretty big. There's 100,000. There's at least 100,000 books in that store. It's an emporium of wisdom, of history, of entertainment, literary, genius, 10 billion words. And my little humble story it got launched there, and it's going to sit shoulder to shoulder and spend some time on those shelves, with those other incredible books. How long it spends, I guess, will depend on how people enjoy and value my story. So yeah, it was a pretty proud moment, and it is a high. But in terms of a high, every day is about getting up and giving it your best shot. So rather than, I try and stay, above the kind of middle baseline. So you enjoy and you value every single moment. The aspect that I loved the most and that I reflected on, as we celebrated later, and when I woke up this morning a little bit dusty, is that, and there were lots of people there that I knew. There were family, there were friends, people I've known for decades. And I got to speak to absolutely everyone, because fortunately everybody wanted a book and they wanted it signed. Again, very humbled and blessed. But every single person's reaction, even the people in my life that I know, in my family, came up and said to me, "You made me think. Like, you really made me think. You made me reflect on my life. You made me pause, and you made me consider, or evoked me to consider a whole bunch of things and reflect." And for me, that could not, I don't seek, recognition. I don't want that. This is not about me. I wrote this for other people to share my wisdom and my experience so that other people can go find their own greatness. And that, more than anything else, was truly special. A few handfuls of people that have read my story have been very specific about immediately the things that they've gleaned that they actually want to change in their lives. And that, for me, is purpose. That is truly meaningful. And I do feel very effusive, and I do feel very blessed to have this opportunity.
Yeah, wow. Wow. I can really hear the humility and the gratitude.
Yeah, it's interesting, because gratitude is one of the 14 steps to greatness, and building a sense of gratitude every single day brings true meaning to your life. And we are pretty lucky. Most of us are very fortunate and lucky, whether we've earned that right or we haven't. We're in a pretty good place. And so I think humility and gratitude is about valuing, is about being grateful, and is about then offering your gratitude externally. And in the first moment I truly learned gratitude in my life was when I was almost dead. I've nearly died a whole bunch of times. And I got hit by a drunk driver when I was 17, and the world went black, and I woke up in the ambulance. And the only recollection I have is that I could, I put my hand up here, I could feel my jawbone sticking out the bottom of my face, and thinking, oh, wow, what has happened? Why did this happen to me? And I woke up a few hours after an 8-hour emergency operation, jaw wide back together. And I reflected for a few hours, and I felt very sorry for myself. And the questions I was asking was, why me? I'm 17 years of age. I'm fit and healthy and have my whole life in front of me. Is my face going to be completely disfigured? Am I going to be able to eat again? All these kind of questions. And then I saw there was a sort of hospital gurney went past, and a young boy on there, and he had no hair, and it was pretty obvious, his treatment. In that moment, I suddenly realized that I would be going home, and perhaps he wouldn't, and perhaps there were lots of other people around that wouldn't, or their lives were changed irrevocably. And I had this sense of immense gratitude that I was alive. And I've carried that throughout the whole of my life. And it's happened to me lots of other times. But every time it's happened, how we look at things will determine how our lives are. And so I've always looked at things with gratitude instead of saying, hey, I've just broken 10 ribs and got my face torn up because a truck hit me while I was on my bike. I'm just great. I'm just instantly grateful. So our mindset, which is one of the biggest of the 14 steps to greatness, is our mindset is everything. Our mindset is so powerful. It influences, all of our emotions, everything we do, every decision we make. So you can nurture your mindset to become whatever you want it to be and build another step to greatness, which is belief. So if that makes sense.
Talk us through that connection. So you can nurture your mindset. So you wake up, and let's say you wake up in a crappy mood, right? So how do I nurture my mindset, and how does that then link to belief?
Belief is evidence-based. To build belief, you must first make a small decision around courage, and then maybe lots of other decisions. There's a whole bunch of things that line up, and mindset until you build belief. And if actually, can I just go back? Sorry, to your first question, because I will go tangentially.
Perfect.
Because there are so many things that I want to share.
Amazing.
2 books, 170,000 words, so many things I want to share. So your question, yes. So one of the techniques that I developed decades ago, and particularly when my life, I made a small decision that completely changed the course of my life when I was 35 years of age, and I faced my greatest fear, is, I had a gratitude inventory. And I started that out as a practical exercise with a piece of paper and a line drawn down the middle. And I took this away from an amazing presentation I saw from a remarkable human many decades ago, who had gone from life, being born with a kind of silver spoon, privileged, and had wasted everything, completely lost everything. And one day, they kind of woke up in jail with a long jail sentence, and literally wrote a line down a piece of paper and said, what I have to feel grateful for, and what have I actually done to my life. And on one side, it was just, I'm alive. And he built his life around that one element on his gratitude ledger or inventory. So I did that, and I developed that to the point that when you do something consistently, and it becomes a habit, then you can do it. You can do it mentally as opposed to actually having writing it down. So I practiced every single day. First thing when I woke every single morning was a gratitude inventory, and I found that list is the gratitude part is endless when you really think about it. I have a roof over my head. I have friends. I have family that love me. I have food on the table. I can pay the bills. I live in a beautiful country, in a beautiful place, and so on and so on. Let me tell you, much of the world doesn't have, those basic elements and foundations in their life. And you start with this immense sense of positivity and relevance. And it doesn't matter what you write on the other side, unless, of course, you're seriously ill and perhaps you're going to die, or someone is close to you, or, obviously your family. There ain't too many things that you can pile on one side that are and it's like a set of scales. And I used to visualize scales and say, okay, well, my gratitude's up here and the other side is really actually down here. And so that was a practice that in the end, after a number of years, that almost became redundant because I just woke with a, immediate sense of positivity. And the other practice that I often put into motion was the 4-second rule, which is about making a decision that requires discretionary effort in 4 seconds. Because our minds will tell us, especially if you live in relative comfort, your mind will convince you that this easy thing, that instant gratification is the thing you should do because it won't require effort. It won't require courage. It won't require you to face your fears, whatever they are. And as opposed to this more difficult thing. But this more difficult thing is the way. And as Ryan Holiday would say, the obstacle is the way. And I'm happy for us to talk a lot about how you deal with struggle and adversity and how you build resilience. So those are two practices. I've got a whole bunch, and across my 2 books, and others that I've learned from amazing humans that I've curated and added in a logical sequence. When you experience tragedy, setback, a failure, and I've had many, many of those and epic failures, it's what you see. So do you see a wall or do you see a door? It's as simple as that. Resilience is how quickly and effectively you see a door as opposed to a wall. And once you see it, how effectively and quickly you can open that door and move through with belief. That's resilience. And resilience is, again, it's a process. It is a process. It's a process of experiences, but it's a process. And, you need to nurture and develop certain aspects of your life or certain steps to build that resilience. And it all begins with purpose. Most of all, everything in life, everything in life that's meaningful comes from purpose. Purpose is the ultimate antidote to fear. Purpose is the ultimate antidote to lethargy, apathy. Fear. It is just the antidote. And if you look at remarkable humans in history who've changed the world, changed the way we think, changed, just changed things that are just immense global changes. Their purpose is so big that it transcends everything. They achieve the most remarkable accomplishments, whether it's for the good of mankind or because purpose is the core, purpose is the nucleus. And so everything starts with purpose. And then you got to go find some courage. And then you got to nurture your mindset. And you have to plan. If you want and desire any part of your life to be as great as it can be, or you to be the greatest that you can be, you must have a plan for it. At the very heart of the Stoic philosophy, is discipline and self-discipline and self-mastery. So discipline, people think it's just about, I just got to keep doing that. The Stoics tell us that discipline is the alignment of wisdom and action. Wisdom and action. Discipline is showing up every day to do the things that are the things that will make a difference, regardless of what's happening in your life, in the world, around you. And then most of those days, you probably won't feel like it. Well, many of those days you won't, because we're humans. Things happen. The world happens around us. But lots of what happens around us, we're not in control of. And we allow ourselves to be distracted, to be controlled. We allow ourselves to find excuses because of reasons. So why is it that one human in the same circumstance will look at what's happening around them or a circumstance totally different? Why does one see a wall and one see a door? It is all about nurturing your mind. And over a 2-decade period when I was, later in my life, when it changed its pathway and I was training, there were times when I was broken, truly broken. I was physically broken and, which also leaves you mentally broken. But I always, no matter what happened, I saw a door quickly. And I trained 11,000 times. And there was not a single occasion, unless there was an absolutely compelling reason, where I did not do a training session.
You have dropped so many gems through that, and gosh, you've got some stories to tell. I don't want to lose sight of the stories, but I know, you started talking about your professional life, and, I think that's a beautiful segue into the real math of business and the two sort of key elements that we look at when it comes to the real math of business, which is people and math. And the reason why I think this is fascinating, before you even sort of morphed into sharing some of your professional background, the question that was coming up in my mind, or the thought that was coming up in my mind, was, you sound like a wise sage. You sound like very Yoda-esque, very, what's the guy off Karate Kid?
Mr.
Mr.
Miyagi.
Miyagi. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, hang on a second. Like, you were a CEO, your finance CEO, you shared with me before the show that you've had a big split in your career and your life between maths and art. And I'm going, but hang on, how are you drawing upon your background? Like, how have you gone from that background to where you are now, speaking in such a profound and wise manner? I'm wondering if we can sort of, what I'd like to get from all of our guests is a ratio of the real math of business. When it comes to business success, what is that ratio of people and math? Because it is a combination of both, as far as I believe. I'm wondering if we can land on your ratio, but maybe if you can do that through giving us a bit more of a look under the hood in terms of what you've done in business and work that has shaped this ratio for you and led you to developing these 14 steps, this great wisdom that you've already shared with us so far.
Okay, there's a lot in there. Firstly, thank you. That's very generous of you. I do wrestle with, coming up. I'm challenged by coming up with a number. And I love that concept, because that's what you actually want to do, is you really want to challenge people. There are 2 points there. What do I think it should be, and what is it? And obviously it's dependent upon the business itself, because all businesses are very different, and their services or products are very different. I believe, and we are in a time of massive disruption. I'm pretty old. I don't remember the Industrial Revolution, but this is the tech revolution. We're in a place of huge displacement and uncertainty, and with that comes that challenge between the math, the efficiency. And that's the biggest disruption that we're seeing at human cost. The challenge is how far we go this way, because efficiency, AI, is attractive if you run a business and you own a business, because it saves costs, and the biggest cost that it saves are people. So my question is, have we, in terms of this revolution, have we crossed the point of no return, that at the cost of humans, we create efficiency and drive profits, and we see that across every single business and every single industry? I feel that myself. Life is connection with human beings, and we are rapidly losing that connection. In business, you can't speak to another human being, when you've got an issue or a challenge. It's just almost impossible. And there are large organizations that are incredibly frustrating, because if you don't have the capacity to be able to resolve a problem online, and you have some tech capability, then how do you solve something? And so we're driving profit based on efficiency, and the biggest efficiency is human cost. If you're running a business predominantly to make money, the maths is 70 or 80%. It will be at the cost of the people in your business, humans, and the people that you serve. So the ratio has got to be in favor of humans. There's no point in, shareholders, like big shareholders and business owners, becoming wealthy, like really wealthy, because that is at the cost of people. And society will fracture and disintegrate because we all need to earn an income. We all deserve to have a good life. We all deserve opportunity. We all deserve freedom of speech. But in any society, in any business, as the mass, outweighs the people, then we have a massive social issue. I would love to think that it's 70-30 or 65-35 are in favor of humans. If the meaning is based on you making more and more and more money that you do not need, unless you're going to do something really, really good for the world with it, that's not a tenable, situation.
I'm just going to jump in because you've said some really fascinating things. Have we reached the point of no return where we are spending too much time or energy and focus on efficiency at great human cost with that human feeling? I think that's a really clever question. But what I love, the minute you said this, I thought of a client. The balance of that ratio is purpose. And what I thought of was I was facilitating a session with a client recently who kind of had a great purpose, on their website. But fortunately, I share the humor in that as well, who fortunately had some shakeups in their executive team. So had brought in some new thinking. And so there were a couple of people in that room really wrestling with what are we here for? Like, what are we really here to do?
Yeah.
And what came out of that, and it, like many businesses, what they do is not that sexy, not that purpose-driven, right? And so we really had to look through what is the purpose of us being here. And the purpose was providing an environment where we can employ people of the region and grow them so that they can be productive contributors to the community, to the large community. So their balance, and this is, and I see this, when they finally verbalize this, I went, yes, now I get it. I see it because you have so much of a focus on people. That makes complete sense. And so the balance is purpose. Sort of the rhetoric question I would ask anyone listening to this, based on what you've just said, is go and have a look at what your company's true purpose is. Look at the words on the website, challenge if that's the real purpose, and then look at how that is reflected in your own real math of business ratio. Because, some people are in it for the money. And so, whether or not that's okay, that's up to them. But you would expect to be balanced in that way.
Yeah. Well, we all are. And this is the dilemma. I've always spoken to people. I've been in financial services for 35 years. And the question for me is always, are you doing this for need or are you doing it for greed? There's a tipping point. There's a point that you desire more than you really need. And I mean, really more than you need. And so what that becomes, so your purpose just becomes just to become wealthy and have shiny, well, maybe not, but, but generally that's what it becomes. So the question around purpose and the question around, company integrity and purpose is, are you just saying you want to do good or do you really want to do good? And I changed, probably the best way for me to describe this is, I took the easy road. I did a whole bunch of things that I'm not proud of. I did some good things, but until the age of 35, didn't always have the courage. I did a whole bunch of things that, I wanted to make up for. My regret grew significantly. And I came up with a technique called the armchair test for me, because in financial services, is all about acquiring enough wealth to be comfortable, which is still a need or greed situation. But so that you can get to the point you have freedom of choice to do anything, and, you can retire and, really enjoy that. So the armchair test is, I would ask anyone to do this, is imagine you're 65 and you're sitting in your armchair and you're reflecting on your life. And where you're at now, how would you feel? What would you be proud of? What brings you meaning? have you given life your best shot? Have you been of service? Do you make a difference to another or many other human beings? And so in business, your opportunity is to bring meaning to the people that come into your business to serve other people. That was the shock that completely woke me up, because I looked at it and I went, what good do I like? I think I think I do good things, but if I didn't achieve any more for the world and people around me and for myself, accomplish any more, how would I feel? Because at that point, I'd felt enormous regret over not taking an opportunity much earlier in my life, which was my passion and my dream. I made a pragmatic decision. And that's like a check. It's like a reality check to go, you've got 30 years to go till that point in time.
Yeah.
Don't continue not making a difference. Because at the end of the day, you can sit there with 20 million bucks, 30 million bucks. But if you haven't brought meaning, if you haven't done things, if you haven't served people, if you haven't changed the world, if you haven't made a difference, that 20 million, that 30 million, what are you going to do with it?
I want to come back to something that you said at the very beginning of this conversation, because how you just described the business landscape, and particularly this idea need or greed, I think that's just fascinating. You said, and you said this in response to my observation that you must be on a high, and you said, actually, I like just to stay just above the middle and not go in peaks and troughs. And I guess what I just thought when you were talking about this idea of need or greed and do we need squillions of dollars, and actually the balance is purpose, kind of brought me back there. And I guess what's going through my head is the title of your book is Greatness Doesn't Care. And when we think about the word greatness, we think about greatness. We do think about big, high, wealth, let's say. Yet you've talked about this idea, need or greed, the balance is purpose. You said you kind of try and stay just above the middle. How does that can you reconcile that with greatness for me?
Yeah, I'm really pleased you asked that question, because the premise, like, there's 14 steps to greatness, but in the first chapter, I explain to me what greatness means, and greatness is everyday greatness. Society again has conditioned us that greatness is about winning and the podium and glory. The reality is, last estimate, there's 8.239 billion people on this planet. So you take, and we zone in and focus on business or sport, or and we have heroes, but for one person to win the Nobel Peace Prize or the 100 meters world championships, there's one person that's the greatest, and 8.239 billion people minus one that ain't. And so how many people remember who came 5th, 20th, 100th? If you're 100th in the world, that's greatness. So, if you are 45 years of age and you've never run in your life, and you can get yourself to the point that you can run 5 or 10 kilometers, that is greatness. Greatness is personal. Greatness is individual. And greatness is being better than you are now and living with purpose and accomplishing something that has meaning. Now, to have meaning, you must overcome struggle. You must overcome adversity. You must overcome setbacks. You must overcome failure. And the more of that you do, I know that because I have endless amounts of all those experiences. But what brings meaning is that I didn't quit. I didn't prevail. I prevailed. And even if those milestone goals along the way I don't achieve, I have great pride that I gave it my absolute best shot. And that is a self-reflection. If you said to me 5 years ago, Jason, you're going to write 2 books, you're going to write one, give it a shot on your own. No one's going to back you. But you're going to sell thousands of copies around the world. And people are going to tell you often, I read your book and it changed my life. And now, I've got a real opportunity to influence tens, hundreds of thousands of people. Did I think I'd be doing that 5 years ago? Not a chance.
It strikes me as interesting as we start to round out this conversation. It strikes me as interesting as your armchair moment is in 3 years from now.
Yeah. And you know what? I have no regrets. My life, and touch wood that something doesn't happen to me or anyone around me. It often seems to happen to me. I could not be happier. I could not feel more blessed and more purposeful. I could not have dreamed 10 years ago of feeling like this at 62. And I was feeling pretty good 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I live with regret, and now I have none. Now I just feel so fortunate, lucky, blessed that I can make a difference.
What you've produced with the wisdom you've developed over the past, 62 minus 35 years, can't do the maths, ironic, is phenomenal. And I think that is a gift. That is a gift for us. Your work has the potential to shape the real math of business. And I'll tell you why. The real math of business ratio. I'll tell you why. Because there are still a bunch of people out there who just want the money, who are willing to have that ratio be very highly skewed towards the math at the cost of humans. As you said, we're seeing it. From the sounds of it, from the feedback you got last night, your book has the power to prompt everyone who reads that book, because you said the common feedback was you made me think, you made me pause, you made me question. And I think for those leaders and founders and investors and shareholders who do want the math of business to be weighted heavily towards the math side at the expense of humans, it would be such a gift for them to read your book and for them to have that pause moment.
Thank you.
And ask, is that all there is? Because I know we just touched the surface here today. I'm so thankful and grateful that you have come and spoken with us today. I look forward to having you back on and seeing how it's being accepted by the world. I'm sure it will do fantastically. You've given us, I think I've counted, you've given us 8 of the 14 steps, so you'll need to buy the book to get the rest of the 14. But I do just want to say thank you, because I do actually, and I've never said this to a guest before, I think your work has the potential to really move the ratio in a way that I think you're right. I think we need more of that thinking, and we need more of that that humility, that gratitude, and the balance of purpose. And maybe it's the redefining of greatness. I want to just ask you, Jason, if you had a parting gift or lesson that you could give to everyone listening to this today, what would that be?
Find some stillness and reflect. Find stillness in your life, find presence, reflect. Are you hurtling along at 100 miles an hour because that's what you're supposed to do and what society tells us? And reflect. If where are you at? Where do you want to be? How will you want to feel in 20 years or 10 years? And have you made a difference to the world? I believe as long as you're alive, it's never too late, but people can get, so buried in regret that they just can't get out of it and they can't change. And, just stop, reflect. You can change the pathway on any given day, trajectory of your life, one small decision, and then lots of other decisions that go with it, but you can change it. And do you see a wall? Do you see a door?
Yeah, I love that visual is going to stay for me forever. That's very, very clever and really accessible. So much when you're having hard times feels inaccessible. Just that visual, am I facing a door or a wall? So accessible. So we might finish up the conversation with that visual in everyone's mind. Jason, so you can get the book at the Sydney CBD Dymocks for sure, where you had the official launch last night. Where can people get a copy of the book? I'm sure everyone who's listening to this wants to. Where do they find out more about you if they want to connect with you? How do we stay connected?
You can pretty much find me in most places if you Google me these days. Unfortunately, there's a lot of it. So you can reach out and connect to me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Insta. www.greatnessdoesn'tcare.com. And my contact details are there. With the Australian release, so it's pretty much in every bookstore in Australia. You can pick them up in airports if you're traveling. And then North America and UK and Europe later in the year. But yeah, or anywhere online, Amazon. I think Amazon sold out in a few days. But on all platforms, you can get it on all good digital platforms. And please, if you enjoy it and it brings value to your life, can you get a copy for someone else, or suggest someone else reads it, or go and leave a review? Sorry to ask for that, but yeah, you can get it anywhere. And I would, and I hope it makes a difference for you.
Jason, thank you so much for your generosity of sharing today. I have learned, you should see all the notes. Like I said before, I've written so many notes, I can't even read them. So thank you. Thank goodness we're recording this. Greatness Doesn't Care. I just love that. I bloody love that title so much. Cannot wait to get stuck into it and can't wait to follow the journey. Thank you for your time today.
Very kind. My pleasure. Thanks, Lena. Bye-bye.
See you later. And what a great chat with Jason Dunn. And that leads us right into our listener question. And if you want to submit a listener question, you can now email us at realmathofbusiness@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify and we'll hopefully get it into a future episode. This week's listener question for this episode is from Margot. Dear Real Math of Business podcast, have you ever had to deal with difficult shareholders and or key stakeholders? I have moved recently to a new job and I think I'm struggling to get through to ours. Maybe it's being new or maybe it's the culture, which has been a bit hard to integrate into as people are quite cliquey. Any thoughts would be much appreciated. Best, Margot. Margot, well, congratulations on your new job. Yeah, look, there's always going to be a culture shock, so hang in there. But, I got to say, when I read your message, the first thing that I was reminded of was the time a CEO yelled at me in person until his face went purple. I was in my late 20s at the time, so I still feel like I was pretty young. And this guy was just going at it. And I just went, holy smoke, what have I done? Like, is this really career limiting? So yeah, I've dealt with some pretty difficult stakeholders. And the other place that my mind went was I caught up with a client recently and we were both joking. I'm not sure how this came up. We were both joking because she made the sales process really difficult. But, and this is what we were joking about, was kind of the interview process, right? But she's one of my best clients because she's really invested. So we've been working together for 4 or 5 years now. She really was invested in the growth at the time and she still is. So she really cares. So it just made me think, I wonder if your most difficult stakeholders and shareholders just care the most. Do they just care more? And if that's the case, that's like a really good thing. So maybe then the question or a perspective to think about your challenge is, do you care about them enough? A few practical tips, though, which I'm sure you're probably really keen to hear, is you need to know them more than they know themselves. And I know that that's really hard because you're new, but because you are new, you are looking at things through fresh eyes, and there's some real value in that. You get to, what you see is what you get. So you can probably see things that others can't. So what you want to be thinking of in order to help build up a picture of them so you know them more than they know themselves is you want to be thinking, what do they need? What are their challenges? What are they thinking, feeling, seeing, hearing, saying, doing? And what do they really, really want? And what are they scared of? Because when you kind of build up a picture of who they are, then you can have greater cut through in your communication and they'll start to see things that you care about them. It's not all about you. It's actually all about them. And we ran this we ran this in a session yesterday with a group of my clients. And one of the key insights was that some stakeholders care about kind of strategic things and some stakeholders care about the sort of more detail and tactical. And we said, well, actually, that's a really good insight because you can talk to those different groups of stakeholders differently. Because I think the key of all of that is making sure that you're talking in their language. You don't want to talk in your language. So, with my CFO clients, we're always saying, don't talk in finance language. No one wants to talk about finance jargon. Talk in the language of the business. It's the same with marketing people. Don't do more marketing speak to the business. Talk their language. And I guess the final thing I will just say is just remember you can only influence one person at a time. So when you're thinking about your whole stakeholder or shareholder group, know you can only influence one person at a time. And so just be thinking, list out all of your stakeholders and just try and form a relationship with them one person at a time, starting with perhaps who might be the most important stakeholder or even who might be the stakeholder that has the biggest influence around you so that they can go and say good things about you to others. So it's a really important question because, as you know, stakeholder management is everything. So hopefully those answers and tips help you, Margot. Thank you for listening to The Real Math of Business with Alana Bennett. If you liked this episode, remember to subscribe for more content and stay on top of the real math of business. I've been Alana Bennett. Thank you for listening.